Hey guys, it's Spicy, and in this video I just want to talk a little about Echo. I want to give you my early impressions, what I think about her abilities, her ultimate. I want to give you guys just some early tips on what I found is like the most effective way to use her so far on the PTR. And while I do that, I just want to provide some gameplay footage for all my friends who haven't had a chance to play her yet. So let's get started. So ever since Echo came out, I've been doing endless PTR lobbies with viewers in my Twitch stream, and one of the things you find out pretty quickly, guys, is that it's a very fun character to play. You know, with all the balancing issues out of the way, it's not hard to come to the conclusion that this is one of the more unique heroes they've released in a while. Echo has a unique playstyle that kind of makes her stand out from a lot of other heroes, because she has a little bit from everyone. You know, she has the flying of a Pharah, she has the mini tracer ult for her secondary fire, she has Zenyatta orbs for her primary fire that are just a little bit faster, she has a mini Moira ult, and she has probably one of the most unique ultimates in the game where you can just completely copy another character. I'm someone who always believes, and even to this day, that Ana was probably the best new hero that was released in Overwatch, just because her kit is so comprehensive and it is such a skill oriented kit. I just love the character design of Ana, and Echo comes kind of close to it just because there's some complexity to her kit. There's, for example, her E ability. Right now in the PTR, it does 50 damage per second when your target is above half health, and 200 damage per second when your target is below half health. I really like that complexity that is added to the ability. They didn't just make it simple cookie cutter ability that does the same amount of damage. There's a complexity to it, which I think is great for character design. Now we can sit here and we can argue about the values of the damage that focusing beam does, and that will most likely get tweaked while it's in the PTR, but it's still a very good ability. But the ability I really like about Echo though is the glide ability. The reason for this is because it's a movement ability that is very unique to her, and it doesn't really exist on a lot of other characters in the game. I think in the future, when this character gets released on the main servers and it's played in competitive, I think one of the main things that differs between good and great players is going to be how they utilize the glide ability and how much they've mastered the movement when it comes to the glide ability. This is an ability that you can use to push people when you're getting into fights, and you can also obviously use it to escape when you get into trouble. And I think managing the cooldown for this ability is going to be critical when it comes to being a good Echo player. I would compare this ability to the Rocket Punch with Doomfist or Swift Strike with Genji. Like, those two abilities are incredibly important when it comes to their playstyles, and the high level players manage those two abilities incredibly well. In my first couple games, the biggest problem I ran into with the glide ability was I used it to push a lot of fights, and then when I got into trouble, the glide ability would be on cooldown, so like my escape ability was completely gone, and there was no way I was going to win, and I would end up just getting eliminated. But when I started managing the cooldown and being more conservative with it, it was a lot easier to actually get out of situations where I was in trouble, because you get a massive burst of speed in the direction that you were moving when you use the ability, which means it's pretty easy to avoid a lot of damage. Also, I found the best way to use glide is to not just press shift, but press shift in combination with an arrow key in your intended direction, and also spacebar, so you get a massive boost initially when you use that ability. Because if you don't do that, then you just kind of miss out on that speed initially, and it doesn't give you the full value out of using the glide ability. Now, another thing that might get tweaked on the PTR a little bit is her sticky bombs, which is her secondary fire. I could see them maybe reducing the damage just a bit, because right now you can pretty much one-shot some squishies in certain positions. At the same time, it is a projectile, so it is a little bit harder to hit, especially at longer distances. But the great thing about it is that because it's AoE damage, you don't have to hit your target directly. You can hit a wall near your target, and it will do AoE damage to everyone near that wall, for example. You can use this to block off certain choke points on maps. And if you use the secondary fire in conjunction with your glide ability while you're in the air, what you can do is while you're in the air and you have a top-down view of the map and your enemy, you can actually place the sticky bombs behind the enemy on the ground. And when they eventually back up, it will do the AoE damage to them. Another creative way to use this is to stick the sticky bombs to certain tanks. If you see a Diva or a Winston diving back to their team, you can stick those bombs to them, and then when they get back to their team momentarily, those bombs will explode, dealing all the AoE damage to all the squishies around them that are trying to heal them. Another thing you can do is fly over the enemy team and sticky bomb the backside of the enemy Reinhardt. So then any characters that are behind him, for example like an Ana or a Mercy that are trying to heal him, will also get damaged. There's a lot of creative ways to use this sticky bomb, and even if it gets nerfed on the PTR, it's still going to be a great way to do damage. So the sticky bombs and the focusing beam are going to be your primary ways to deal damage, and then your primary fire is essentially just there to finish off certain targets if you just fall short, or do some poke damage while you're beginning the fight. And when you combine all this, you can come up with a combo pretty easily to do a lot of damage and kill squishies in less than 4 or 5 seconds. The combo is pretty much secondary fire into focusing beam. So if you're targeting someone who's a squishy, for example, like a DPS or a healer, it's going to get your targets down to 50% health, and at that point you just pull out your focusing beam and you burn them to death, because that focusing beam is going to do 200 damage per second when your target is below 50. Now if you're in a position where you miss some of your shots with your secondary fire, or you miss a portion of your focusing beam, this is where your primary fire comes in, and you pepper that damage in to finish off the target. And then you use your glide ability to escape that fight and get back to your team for heals. Now another thing you can also do is you can use your glide ability to push a target that you know you can get a pick on and eliminate because they're relatively low. You can use your glide ability to rush into them, and then use your primary fire to dish out any extra damage that needs to be done to finish them off. And if you do it quick enough, then your glide ability will still be active, so you can actually press spacebar and press the back arrow key, and you will fly up and back and away from the fight and to safety. The playstyle that I've found works best with Echo is a in and out type of playstyle. Think about her as a Genji, Tracer, Doomfist. You're using your glide ability to create alternate flanking angles that will put you in a good position to use your combo, which is your secondary fire and your focusing beam, to finish off targets, and then you're trying to escape that fight as quickly as you can, because one of the things you're going to quickly realize is that Echo isn't good in extended close range fights. She's not someone that's going to win against a Brig or a Reaper or a McCree within 3 or 4 meters. You have to get out of there, because that's a very dangerous situation to be in. Now the only time you should be going in there is if you know that target is below 50% health and you can focus beam and finish that target off and safely escape. Because if you get caught in those fights for longer than 4 or 5 seconds, there's no way you win. Even against tanks, it's just not possible. And this is why managing your glide abilities cooldown is really important. Also, don't just focus on getting picks. You can also use some of your abilities to help your team in the fight. For example, your focusing beam. It not only does 200 damage per second when your target is below 50 health to the other characters, but it also does that to shields. So if you have a Ryan versus Ryan fight in your game, and if you see the enemy Reinhardt's shield cracking, it's not a bad idea to focus beam that and give your Reinhardt an advantage in the fight, and maybe give him an opening for shatter. So as you can see, guys, it's a very versatile hero that has a lot of different abilities that can be used in many different situations. And even if the abilities get nerfed a little bit, which I wouldn't be surprised on the PTR, simply because every hero initially gets nerfed a little bit in Overwatch, right? Like it's just been a trend, and that's just the way it is, because I think if they put heroes underpowered onto the game, then no one's gonna play them. They'd much rather have them overpowered, people play them, test them, and then they can bring them back to normal. And I say this and I haven't even gotten to her ult, which is obviously, as we know, one of the most unique ults in the game. So with our ult, you can copy any character, and once you copy that character, you have 15 seconds to use that character, in which you get accelerated ult charge compared to using that character normally. Now a lot of people have said that this is OP, and because they've used it in training ground and they've gotten 5 pulse bombs with Tracer, but I don't think they realize that when you put this in a competitive scenario at any rank, and there's actual real players running around, it is not easy to do. Think about when you're Genji and you pull out your blade. Literally every other character on the other team is trying to stop you. With Echo, this is going to be like 10 times worse, because when you copy a character on the other team, your character model actually turns dark blue. So you stand out more than any other character. Like, you stand out more than Sigma, who's all the way up in the air when he's ulting. So people are going to be hard to focusing you. And it's not easy to hit all your shots, get the pulse bomb, hit the pulse bomb by itself, and do it again. But you're trying to do all this while the other 6 players are completely focusing on you and trying to eliminate you. Like, that's not easy. And if the other team doesn't have a Tracer on the other team, you can't even do this. And because, guys, there's certain characters in the game, their ultimate animations are so long that it's mathematically impossible to get 2 ults in 15 seconds. For example, look at Brig. Her ult animation, guys, lasts for 6 seconds while the whole armor pack goes to your team. It's impossible to get 2 of those, because even if you get the second one and you get lucky somehow, that animation is going to be completely cancelled out when your character turns back to Echo after 15 seconds. Now with that said, that doesn't mean that Brig is a bad character to ult with. It's actually not that bad because you gave your team a bunch of armor. However, like just this idea that you can get multiple ults in a real game, it is very tough. And while playing, the one thing I realized again and again with her ult is that it's a lot easier to get value out of your ult when you copy a tank or a healer compared to a DPS. Because a lot of times if you copy a DPS, you're most likely only going to get one ult. And in that case, I would argue, well, why didn't you just play that DPS in the first place? Now, obviously there's exceptions and there's certain DPS characters that are actually good to copy, and I'll talk about that later. But in terms of tanks and healers, it's just so much easier to get value because you're able to have an ultimate that is a utility to your whole team rather than just you. Like think about it, if you turn into our enemy Reinhardt, even if you only get one shatter, that is really great value because it helps your whole team. And at the same time, when you turn back into Echo, the whole enemy team is going to be shattered on the floor for you to pick off. Like that's great value. And maybe you can save your Reinhardt shatter for next fight. Like that is insane value, and it's not hard to do because you can hit one flame strike with Reinhardt in Echo's ultimate mode and it will give you 50% ult charge. That is ridiculous. Imagine turning into the enemy Ana and nanoing one of your tanks. You just saved your Ana's nano for the next fight as well. And if it's the last fight, what you can do is turn into enemy Ana, nano one of your tanks, and then your actual Ana nanos the other tank. So now for the last fight, you have two fully nano tanks going wild. Like just think about that. That's just insane value. And more importantly, guys, it's easier to do, right? Like turning into an enemy Genji and trying to blade 2 times, like good luck, especially at a high rank level. Like that is tough. But turning into a Reinhardt and throwing 2 fire strikes at an enemy team and shattering and saving your Reinhardt shatter for the next fight, like that is not very hard. Like anyone in silver can do that. So early impressions like tanks and healers, terrific value for ulting. If you're going to copy a DPS, don't expect to get 2 ults because I think it's going to be too tough. But I would try to copy characters that have a short ult animation and at the same time are relatively easy to get ult charge with. So characters like Junkrat, Reaper, even Ashe, because if you put a dynamite out and if you hit a bunch of characters, like that is very easy ult charge. And I think out of all the characters in the DPS category, the absolute easiest character to get ult charge with is Mei. Because what you do is you turn into the enemy Mei and you take a little bit of damage, you get your health down to maybe 100 and then you go ice block. And while you're healing, you're actually going to gain a ton of ult charge, and it's just going to, and you're going to protect yourself, and it's easy to do. And then you can just do a quick mail and turn back into Echo and finish off the enemy team. Alright guys, that's gonna do it. That's my early impressions and tips and tricks for Echo. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'm always doing PTR lobbies on my Twitch stream with my viewers, so if you want to join me on there, look in the description down below, go to my Twitch, hit that follow button, hit that notification button so you know when I'm streaming next time, and come in the chat and let me know. Also join the Discord for community games every week, link is in description below. And thanks for watching guys, I'll see you next time. Have a good one boys.